I'm delighted to announce that my book, The Transformation Leader's Body of Knowledge, has recently been released and is available immediately via the TLH website or all leading bookshops. The TLBoK provides you with a wealth of insights, proven approaches and how-to guides to support you on your transformation journey. It's a book that you continue to dip into throughout your career, rather than one that you read once and put on the bookshelf. Grab a copy and let me know what you think. Like any body of knowledge, we will update it with the latest thinking in future editions, so your feedback is essential. In today's episode of the Transformation Leaders podcast, I'm delighted to be joined by Valentina Smirnova. Valentina is an experienced director with strong international exposure, specialising in programmes of change, digital and cultural transformation, and identifying efficiencies and implementing them. She has a passion for strong delivery and first-class business outcomes. I'm sure you're going to get massive value from this episode. So let me introduce you to Valentina now. Well, hello, Valentina. Thank you very much and welcome to the Transformation Leaders podcast. It's great that you can join me today. You've had a fascinating career to date, working in many different countries, and I'm sure working through many different cultures, which I'm quite keen to explore further as we go into this episode. But before we get into the detail, please share with the viewers and the listeners a little bit of background about yourself, your history, your career history, and how you first got involved in change and transformation.
Right. Thank you very much, Tony, for having me. It's a great honor to have this conversation with you. Well, I am currently working for AXA Partners, and I'm part of the finance team. And I think for me, that was quite an interesting journey to get where I am now. Years and years ago, I graduated uni as an economist. And when I graduated it, I thought like, oh, well, my life is kind of penned in front of me. I will join some bank and will be working in the bank, and it will be quite boring, but here we go. So that's what I chosen. Funny enough, I never worked for the bank. I worked for an airline. I worked for the travel company. I worked for a long stretch for an assistance company where I got a lot of wonderful experiences and got a lot of skill being really sharpened up. And last 9 years or so, I'm working for insurance company. So my journey into change and kind of transformation area was coming from, I would say, probably quite standard for many people in change and transformation. I started from the direct management or from managing a smaller team, then the bigger team, then the large team, a super large team across a few locations, etc., etc. And once you start working with relatively substantial teams of people who deal with a lot of transaction of different nature. So in my case, it was operations department. So your transactions are cases. It's somebody's lives and somebody's sicknesses or somebody's tragedies. Depends on what's been happening there. You always come across a moment of time when you see that, well, it works okay, but it could do better. And to do better, you need to start really looking into things and start thinking like, what do we need to change? That's where the change word comes across first. And then starting from the gradual small changes, at some point you say, well, the small one doesn't do anything much any longer. So we need to transform. That's where the transformation words get in. And then you start doing the smaller things, the bigger things. You change the system, you change the process, you change both systems and process. Then you work with different teams in different countries. And then, for me at least, that was a realization point at some point saying, well, you know what? The countries are not different from each other in terms of need for change or need for transformation and how it gets done. So the differences are in cultures, that's for sure. The differences are in languages, no argument in it. But if we talk about, I don't know, finance, for example, we always have invoices to be paid. We always have invoices to be raised. Whether you are in France or you're in UK, you still have those parts. Sure, they would be issued in different languages. They will follow a little bit different regulations, but still the basics would be the same. You know that. And your job as a then transformation or change leader becomes to make it clear and kind of reconcile the differences between different countries if you walk across different countries, and respect their differences, but at the same time identify similarities and get their people agreeing that by the real core of us, we are very same. And in what we do and how we want to be treated as employees, as well as how our customers want to be treated as customers. So that's how I got into transformation and change, first in operations area, and then I moved into finance, because again, transactions are transactions. It's a case or it's money transactions. It's repeatable activities.
It's fascinating. I think there's so many people that come into change almost by accident, and then it grabs hold of you. And it certainly in my case was, my background was banking, and I was fortunate enough to get involved in a large transformation program, and then realised very quickly that actually I prefer change and transformation to steady state banking. It grabbed hold of me, and I've stayed in it for 20 odd years now. But you're absolutely right in terms of what you've just said there about when you peel an organisation back, irrespective of what country it's in, what sector it's in, whether it's global, whether it's local, fundamentally, we all do the same types of things. We create something that delivers something to a customer or a client, and we get payment for that. And the mechanisms are exactly the same. Some more complex, absolutely, but if you break it into its core component parts, I think it's a very great sort of approach to have, that actually, we can drive change, and irrespective of whether you're in one country or another, there'll be lots of similarities, and let's understand what those similarities are, and equally, let's understand what the differences are, but accept that it's not 100% difference. There's probably 80% is standard and consistent, and we can vary the approach for the 20%. I think a lot of organisations get that wrong, or a lot of people get that wrong, saying that, well, if you haven't worked in this sector, you could never change and never deliver transformation in this sector. My argument is often, well, you can, and actually, out of the transformation leaders are probably better than in-sector transformation leaders, because you ask all the numpty questions.
Absolutely agree. I think when you get a stranger walking into the room, whether this room is industry or country or whatnot, it gives the stranger an excellent opportunity to have a clearer view on what's going on. Of course, they shouldn't be jumping to the immediate conclusion. One needs to be smart about it and get some time gathering data and gathering views and gathering, feelings and impressions and whatnot from people who are inside the sport. But being an outsider gives you an opportunity to see a little bit unbiased to the previous history. So you are not burdened by the fact that you know too much. You probably know a little bit too little, but that is for advantage of the whole company. Because some specialized knowledge sometimes divert people from being able to see those so-called simplification. I don't like the word simplification. I think sometimes it's too much used, and people probably wave this flag too often. But simplification does help a lot. And if the company is kind of working within its own framework, within its remits, not allowing a little bit of fresh air, whether it's consultant or a new hire, doesn't matter who it would be. And they probably are not doing as good as they could if they would allow some stranger to walk into the room. So, yeah, I agree with you absolutely, wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I think that transformation leader, change director role, whether you are new into an organisation or have been in the organisation for many years, the key skill, I think, is to stay above the weeds, because everybody else is operating within the weeds and tend to get bogged down. But you've got to stay above and have that helicopter view almost to understand and ask the questions, the right questions at the right times, to really start to unearth the core answers that the organisation needs to be able to drive forward. And having that ability just to stay above the weeds and ask those questions is a critical skill, I believe.
Again, I have nothing to argument about here. I think the good change and transformation leader is the one who is not ashamed or not afraid of asking the minuscule questions, the silly questions, the questions that nobody asking in the room, and that's how it should be. Because by asking those questions, you actually quite often can understand the depth of the problem or the consequences that it brings along or the challenges that people experienced before. I think what I do in my job normally is that first I want to hear the old stories, the rumors from the past. I mean, what have you done before? Because I think we all at some point in our lives witness the situation when a new person comes in and says, right, I know how it all should be done. We'll do it A, B, C, D, and everything will be perfect. Well, apparently that has been tried. It failed. It doesn't mean that A, B, C, D doesn't work. It means that if you don't know why it failed first time around, you could face the same problem second time around and you fail. So that's why my approach in addressing a new project or coming into a new company would be, I'm listening. I'm asking questions. I'm asking what went wrong. What don't you like? What your aspirations are? Why do you think it doesn't work or anything like that? Any rumors from the past are good rumors. They actually help you to build the future. So that's why I'm quite cautious on giving promises to, like, join a new team. A new boss would ask you, how soon you think you would be able to work out the transformation program, or what do we need to change? I don't know. I know for a fact I won't be able to tell you next week, because I think that would be premature and really kind of childish even, because you don't really know what you deal with. Again, that full information, I think that's where you need to find a delicate balance between being a complete perfectionist and looking for 100% of awareness of everything that is going on, and being a complete helicopter view person saying, oh, I get it, so I know how to sort it out. So finding this delicate balance between the two, that's a bit of an art. And I don't think it's really something that one could teach word by word or page by page. That's probably something that comes with experience being added on top of the skills. You definitely have to have a skeleton in place. You need to understand what kind of, chapters, sections you want to dissect in. But at the same time, you need to go with the flow, I think, and see how the new team, new company will interact with you, with your problem, with your search for truth in some ways,
No, absolutely. And I think that, just to sort of expand on what you just said there, I think any change, any transformation in the main is driven, the success of it is driven by people. And the approach that you just described there about going in and engaging with the people early doors, being inquisitive, asking for their background and background knowledge, what's worked, what's not worked, helps you to build those relationships and build that trust with the wider team. And they're much more likely at that stage then to come on the journey that you want to take them on ultimately.
Absolutely.
They've got ownership a little bit of, or they feel that they've got ownership of that journey because they've helped to form the direction that you're looking to take.
Exactly. I would say that for me, the kind of a recipe for success for transformation project or the change initiative is that happy marriage between two extremes. From one side, you have a full support from the head, from the top. They want to change. They want things to get better, and they are prepared to go through the pains, whether it's financial pains, you need to invest something, or it's more of like a communication, engagement type of soft skills kind of pains, but it will be some pains. And on the other extreme is the people that would be impacted by that change. So they need to get engaged, and most of the cases, they know what's wrong and what could be done better. It's just a way of connecting those two extremes and being in the middle, sometimes being bashed from the both sides, which is fair enough, but you're connecting those two extremes and creating this engagement, understanding from the top management what is the rumors on the ground, and giving an understanding to the rest of the employees that they are heard, they're taken care of, their views are counted, and they are part of this transformation. It's not transformation done to them, but it's more of transformation done with them together, and then it is successful. If we have imbalance one of the sides, I don't think it would work. So it would be either, the tops want and the bottoms not really willing, or the bottoms willing and tops don't care. So either of those situations not really helpful. Yeah.
Oh, interesting, absolutely. Going back to the start, and you when you were explaining a little bit about your background and your career, you were saying that you got involved in some small scale change that went up to medium sized change to larger change in the transformation. So let's come back to the core question that we ask everybody who comes on the show: how do you define transformation? Given that you were just saying that you got involved in some incremental change. What do you think about the definition of transformation?
Well, I think if one would start Googling, there are zillions of definitions for transformation. I think for me, the transformation is a change of a big magnitude. So when the incremental change makes the initial point being so hard to recognize at the end of the journey, that becomes transformation, okay? Because went from the worm to the butterfly, okay? So you can't really see how those two are related, but they are part of the same kind of journey for that particular insect. Same goes for processes or departments. When you start with a small and little improvements initiative, as they call it, continuous improvement, incremental changes. But you see actually the target being so far away from where you're starting, then to me, that is transformation journey. For whatever reasons of the communication, politics, or whatever else, one could call it change just to soften the blow, because we need to admit it, transformation quite often is not the most welcomed word within, corporate environment. Again, neither with the tops nor with the bottoms. It's normally associated with too much of pain. So sometimes it would be good not to call it transformation, but call it continuous improvements. In other circumstances, even the small changes and improvements could be called transformation if the company or the department is really looking to reinvent themselves. Then putting a label of transformation would help them to step from one step to another, although the change could be quite minimal. So that's at least how I like to see the things, yeah.
No, and I agree. I think that the word transformation is often overused, and there's lots of people out there doing transformation, but actually it is general business improvement or continual improvement type of activity. So I share your thoughts around what the definition of transformation is. Something that's fundamentally different. And ultimately, to get from one state to the next, there's going to be a whole series of different projects or programs or a portfolio of smaller things. Absolutely. But when you put those together, you are fundamentally changing from one state to the next. And that's in my world, that's how I define transformation. But I think the challenge is, and why I asked the question is, I've asked the question now 80 times on the podcast so far, and I don't think I've had the same answer twice, because it's very personal how everybody believes and sees and experiences transformation. It's quite a personal matter. So it's always interesting to hear your thoughts. Going back to your...
Well, I also think that, having a transformation as a part of your regular setup, nowadays it's probably a must.
Yes.
Because the world around you or around your company is changing so rapidly. I mean, you and I could remember years when, mobile phones were big bricks, all right? And they were quite expensive thing to have, and even more expensive to use, I guess. So nowadays, if I leave house without having my mobile on me, I'm like, I'm lost. I can't live my life without it. So that is a very transformative development for us as human beings within the span of merely 30, 35 years.
Yeah.
And then those changes are happening even quicker. So we've all seen this rise of popularity of Gen AI, while the Gen AI has been there in the background for a few decades, but now it's available and accessible to the wider populace.
Yeah.
So, and it's a traumatic change for some, and very welcome change for others. Yeah.
It's interesting. I was having a conversation a couple of days ago with someone around that very point about, we all say change is inevitable, but transformation is inevitable now, and it is a constant. And I think it highlights the need for having a transformation leader, chief transformation officer, transformation director, call them what you want, on the C-suite, because having that ability to drive and oversee change and programs across multiple functions and ensuring that they're all hanging together correctly is one element, but equally keeping your head above the parapet and seeing what's coming next and being agile enough to be able to adapt that portfolio of projects to ensure that you are still moving towards the North Star, the vision, however you want to call it, is a critical role for that transformation leader. And I think it absolutely becomes even more critical than ever before that transformation leader is sitting at the top table with a peer group of C-suite members. Do you agree? Do you think that's something that's important?
Absolutely. I think my biggest kind of illustration of that thought for myself, and I share it with my friends, is that I recently watched that movie about Blackberries, the founders of the company and how it got risen so high, and then they expanded And then, well, I mean, I love BlackBerry. I had BlackBerry, and I thought when, iPhones came around, I'd never switch from the QWERTY boards to the touchpad. And then they also lost the sight of these transformational things happening around them. They locked themselves within the success of their genius enterprise. I think they've been ahead of their time when they introduced BlackBerry to the market and all of that. But at some point, they just lost a feel of what's happening outside of their company.
Yeah.
And do we have BlackBerries nowadays? Well, they probably still exist. I think they do, but nobody uses it.
Yeah.
And back in 2007, I think, 2006, that was absolutely on the peak of everything. I wouldn't have imagined that I would be using some strange touch port thingy that doesn't have any keyboards in it. But we do now. I can't imagine using BlackBerry nowadays, right? So to me, this is a clear, very cinematographically greatly achieved illustration on how ignoring transformation outside of your little cocoon could actually, little or big, but still cocoon, could actually pull you down. So, and, it's been a great run for BlackBerry, but very short one.
But it's interesting.
We don't want to be BlackBerry number 2, right?
No. But history is littered with those types of organisations, isn't it? It's the blockbuster.
Yeah.
It's
absolutely.
We sell videotapes or we rent videotapes. Well, great, brilliant. But if I can press a button and just get it screamed into my house now, why would I ever go down to a Blockbuster? And people do become sort of cocoon in their own world. And it's going really well. We've got the market cornered, but the market's moved on, and it is having that ability just to keep your head above the parapet and see what's happening out there, whilst driving the operation and the efficiencies that you're trying to build within the organisation. I think that's comes back to what we were saying earlier. It's so important for that transformation lead or transformation director, chief transformation officer, to be a key part of that senior leadership team and have that view that says, we know what we've got to do now, but what's going to happen 6 months down the line, what's happening 12 months down the line, what's happening 2 years down the line, and let's make sure that we're agile enough to move with the flow and spot opportunities and equally spot the threats.
Exactly, fully agree. And that's where I think the change, ironically, has happened in the companies, or should be happening in the companies. I mean, 5-10 years ago, the transformation role normally would have been associated with, okay, we're in a little bit of outdated situation with whatever is happening. We need to get ourselves together and pull up our socks and get into better shape. Let's run a transformation program. Let's get a transformation director. Once we're there, then we don't need it anymore. We'll just do, BAU, business as usual. And I think now it's more and more better realization in the corporate world that transformation is a part and parcel of BAU. So without continuous transformation, well, one could call it continuous change, whichever word they want to use, really doesn't matter. But to be part of this, evolution, because nothing is standing still for long enough to be good for a long time. Everything is changing too rapidly, I think. And we need to recognize this change. We can't, just put our heads in the sand and say that everything is fine as long as I don't pay any attention to it. So It won't work, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the term transformation program, I never want to use the word program as part of transformation, because it indicates that there's a start and a finish. And as you just said,
exactly,
there's programs and projects that sit beneath the transformation, but it's not a transformation program in itself. And I think the sooner we can get rid of the transformation, the program moniker as part of transformation, the better. What I want to do now,
absolutely agree. Yeah.
What I want to do now, Valentina, is just take you back a little bit through your career and you know how you've worked in different countries, and as you said earlier, lots of different cultures, and I'm differentiating between cultures within organisations and cultures within countries. But as far you might say, well, it's just culture. Fundamentally, there's no difference. But what has been your experience of working across different organisations across different countries and different cultures, both within organisations and within culture and within countries?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think it's an interesting journey for anyone who has a privilege, I would say, to work within different country cultures or company cultures or both. Okay, and I think it enriches one's life to understand that there are different views on the same things. There are different ways of doing same things. None of those is bad or good. They are just different, and they are okay for one environment and less okay for another environment. I think because I had an opportunity to work in Australia, in Russia, obviously in UK as the last 17 years now. So I've been in UK, and I've traveled a lot around the globe for business. So working with teams in Asia, in South Africa, in America. Obviously, in the core, we're all human beings, right? So we're all having our sad days, our happy days, and all of that range of emotions. But we do express our emotions differently. And if one is openly, sharing their joys, one country or one habit or one culture, the fact that the other culture doesn't openly share their joys, it doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just they've been conditioned that way through hundreds and hundreds of years, that this is good to behave that way. My only advice to the colleagues who are, again, privileged enough to experience the richness of different cultures, don't jump to the conclusions. And when you enter new cultural environment, be kind of quiet in some ways. So observe and see how it goes. Get a friend in the sense that somebody who is willing to talk with you openly on what does it mean, why it's bad to voice your argument or voice your disagreement in, I don't know, in quite many Asian countries, why people are quiet. Or it's not often, it's not because what you're saying is not of their interest. It's quite often would be very interesting for them, but that's the way to show respect in that culture. And that's okay. So you just need to learn how to show your respect in return and how to open up a conversation. So to me, the main challenge interacting with people from different countries, as again, last probably, 20 years. It's very scary to say, but 15, let's say. So it was all about, let's pick something up, put it apart, and then make it whole in a different way. So let's change and transform it. As I was saying, I need from the grounds. That means I need to speak to people, and they need to speak with me and tell me what they know, what they feel, what they want. So to get to that point, you need to earn their trust, and you need to get some, comfort between two parties to speak, especially if you're from different cultures. You don't understand what does it mean when they say or don't say, when they smile or don't smile. So that's why this investigation stage quite often is a little bit longer than 1 hour meeting. Yes. So it could be a couple of days, a couple of weeks, or months even sometimes. And the first is to find your ally, somebody who understands this culture, who understands how to crack the code, how to make Japanese person speaking with you openly about the things, how to communicate with a French person. It's not about the language. It's more about, cultural norms, or what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And as it's you who wants to do something, you who wants to get out of it something, you need to change yourself. You can't expect other people to change for you. I mean, they could, change a little bit later on, but not the initial contact. So I think observing and adjusting your style of doing things, that's probably the only way to get a bit closer to the team, to the population, to the audience of a particular country. It doesn't mean that you need to change yourself all the time. You still need to stay authentic, but norms are norms. If, silly example, I think, the pink shirt in Japanese environment, that won't be really great for a man, because that's not, nowadays everything is acceptable, fair enough, but still in the business setting, that won't be looked at very good. So it won't be very professional. It won't be taken seriously. You don't want your first impression just to be broken because of the silly color of your shirt, right? So awareness of those norms and preferences, cultural preferences, that goes a long way, because it shows respect that you pay to the country, to the people you work with. You show your interest in what they are and who they are, and they connect with you in return. And same goes, I think, for the companies. So it's kind of a country within country. If you take some companies, they could be counting thousands, like hundreds of thousands of employees across the globe. If you put all those people together in one spot, that would be big city. So, of course, they have their norms. Of course, they have their ways of communicating with each other and deciding on things. In one company, a decision will be coming from a particular head of the function. Great. In other companies, it would be chain of committees. And even if you don't like either of those, you have to adapt to what you have. Unless you're a very boss of the boss of the boss, and then you can change everything you want, but you need to go through the change of culture program, because it doesn't change instantaneously because you flicked your fingers. So I think my personal recipe for myself, and it just be quiet for a while, observe and see what's good, and find allies. And then you can change the world one teaspoon at a time, I guess.
Great points. I love the idea of, as you said there, getting an ally, getting someone who knows the culture, knows the people, knows the norms, because then you can have that offline discussion with them to get clarity, or when something's happened and you think, well, that's a bit strange. Why have they reacted in that way? You don't go down don't go down this route of, oh, blimey, they must be thinking this, and this. You just ask the question. It's like, oh yeah, it's because of X, Y, Z. It's interesting. My daughter is studying overseas at the moment, in the Netherlands, and they're more direct in she's realised very early on, much more direct with the way that they interact with people than we are in the UK. And initially, it was, oh, that's a bit offhand. I'm only asking a little. But now she knows that. It's, absolutely. And she started to take that norm on as well, in being quite direct. And to build the relationships, to build the friendships, to build the trust, because people like to deal with people that are like themselves. And it's having that ability, isn't it, to put yourself in the shoes of the other person, or the other people, and look through their lens, and then adapt your style to theirs, and that's how you build those relationships.
Absolutely, and I think quite often we are getting to some sort of conflicts or disagreements, just or disappointments, just purely the fact that we wrongly interpret the norms of other culture. So we all know, like, and we went through that, especially in UK at a large extent. I think the tide is turning a little bit, but at some point there was a great wave of outsourcing to India, for example, or to Bangladesh, right? And there were a lot of businesses who were complaining, saying, well, yes, it's a great financially to outsource it to further away overseas, but no, they don't do things the same way how we can do here. Quite often, that is just because when the program has been implemented of transfer, there was not much of dialogue established with that outsourcing organization. Because again, culturally, there is a certain norm. So if I'm a customer, so a client, and this is the service organization, they won't be questioning what you do. So you tell me do from left to right, I'll do from left to right. Okay. So this is a norm in a particular culture, and nobody would be expecting an argument. But as we were saying before, the world is changing, the business is changing, the processes are changing. If you don't put into those relationships the need for the party who you outsourced your services to go along with change and to initiate this change, they won't be. They will be happily doing left to right. And that would be non-efficient any longer. That would be creating complaints or anything else. But that all comes with, ignoring the cultural aspects of the relationships. Yeah.
And you raise a really interesting point with the Indian subcontinent in that respect. I've had lots of experience of working with clients that are outsourced to India and Bangladesh, etc. And we have that discussion about, well, they will do what you ask them to do. Even if they know it's the wrong thing to do, they'll do it because you're a customer. That's their culture. All right, okay, so how do we break that? Well, you encourage them to challenge, but just if you ask them once, not going to get it, every interaction, you've almost got to say, these are the outcomes we want. Now let's understand how we can get there and what's your experience, and try to bring them into the conversation as opposed to this is what we want you to do and being quite directive. It's a different approach that's required, and you've got to keep teasing out, haven't you, that ability.
Absolutely.
For them to, actually, I don't think that's a good idea. We think we should be doing X, Y, Z.
Yeah, and in that particular case, I'd say one of the kind of absurd items to put in there, but it actually makes sense. One of the requirements from me as a client to them as a service organization would be them continuously changing, them continuously challenging, kind of that SLA in some ways. It's a requirement, and then it would be taken as a continuous requirement that would be just part of the job. My job is now so, and that's okay, but that needs to be accounted for. That needs to be thought of. I have another example. We had a project at some point with an organization that was providing us services based in Poland. And we're in UK, and we had a few other country teams involved, also based in Western Europe. So there was another kind of mismatch of cultures, which was initially a little bit painful for the project, because while we were a client to the service organization, they had scope of work of what they needed to do for us. They've been continuously questioning, and they were not letting us kind of easy if we say, let's do A, B, C, D. They said, are you sure? Why not to do A, D, C, B? I'm like, yeah, but we're a client. We want to do A, B, C. In their culture, if they see the way of doing it better, their responsibility would be to tell us that, well, you're probably making mistake. And we as professionals in that area, and frankly, they are professionals in that particular areas, and we were just dumb customers. So we were quite happy that we took on that Polish organization to work with us, because we had a very limited expertise in that software. And the way as we saw it could be beneficial for our organization was probably not right, was definitely not right. And the fact that we had a team who was challenging us continuously was super painful to start with.
Yeah.
But it actually was very beneficial for overall the project, the installation, and for the team in UK and in Spain, it took us a bit of time to get around this, clash of styles, but it was for the best.
Yeah. You remind me of a conversation I had on the very first episode of this podcast with Christoph Berscher. And Christoph made the point that in any discussion, internal, external, with suppliers, whoever, focus on the outcomes. Don't focus on the process. Get clarity and understanding on the outcomes, because how you get those outcomes, there's many different ways of getting there. But if you get into this sort of fixed mindset that this is the way we want to do it to get to those outcomes, likely that you probably won't get to it, or you get to it slower than if you are willing to be quite agile and adapt your approach. So let's focus absolutely on getting real clarity around the outcomes and alignment of all the parties against those outcomes, and then be quite flexible on how you get there. And I've sort of taken that on personally as utilising the satellite navigation mindset that said, if I'm leaving home now, I'll might key in, I want to get to this address in London, and it will set off on a path, but actually it's way it's taking into account things that are happening all around it, and will adapt the approach or the journey path that I'll take to get to that. I'll ultimately get there, but it might not be I was originally set out to achieve. And I think that's critical, isn't it, when you are dealing with third parties, whether they're in country, whether they're in a different country, different culture, getting clarity about those outcomes, I think, is absolutely critical.
Fully agree. Yeah. Again, it's the journey is a combination of different small elements, and some of those elements are with control, others are outside. And even if you're the biggest control freak in the world, you still need to know your limits, okay? And that would be probably the best for the journey. So go ahead and control what you can control, and let the other things fall as they fall, because they are outside of your control. You can't change yourself, you can't change others. If you see that that situation is not working, there are a few ways. You can continue suffer through that. You can walk away. You can change yourself. What you cannot do is you cannot change the other party just because you want so. It could happen by the end of the journey, but it won't happen quickly. So there is no magic wand for that. Yeah.
Brilliant. I have just noticed the time, and it's flown by.
I think we overrun a bit. Yeah.
Always a great sign that it's been a good discussion. So thank you very much, Valentina. I think that was fascinating. I think the sort of discussion that we had around sort of different cultures is very enlightening, and I think a lot of people will take a lot of value from that. So thank you very much, and look forward to keeping in touch with you in due course.
Absolutely. Thank you very much once again for having me. It was a very interesting, 50 minutes that we spent on conversing about it. Thank you. Take care.
Valentina, what a great discussion.
We covered so much, and I think your approach to cultural change is so on point. Thank you for listening to this podcast. We're always interested in hearing from you. What do you find useful from this pod? What would you want us to explore more in future? Please do press subscribe. It helps us to reach more people and share the experience of all my guests. And remember to check out the book, The Transformation Leader's Body of Knowledge, available now from the TLH website and all leading bookshops. See you soon.